Hiroshima, a city of 350,000 facing the inland sea, was the largest city in the Chugoku district in western Honshu, the main island of Japan. Here was located the army headquarters for the Chugoku district. Since the time of the Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95, when the Imperial General Headquarters was temporarily established, Hiroshima was an important military base. The port of Ujina, Hiroshima's outport, served as a supply and transport base throughout the war, while the neighboring town of Kure was one of the principal naval bases of Japan. It was the 6th of August. The air raid alarm, which had been on from the night before throughout the Chugoku district, was lifted for the time being. It was an unusually calm and clear morning. A few minutes after 8 o'clock, 2 super fortresses in formation appeared over the city. Then a bomb came hurtling down from one of the giant bombers. There was a blinding flash, then a deafening explosion. In an instant, Hiroshima was a scene of unprecedented chaos. Hiroshima was instantly transfigured. There was nothing left but ruins, nothing standing to hinder a full view of the city. Every type of transportation was completely wiped out. All institutions and organizations, public and private, were destroyed. Their functions came to a complete standstill. For several days, little information was available. Over the radio from the United States came the announcement that the deadly weapon was the atomic bomb, the first ever used in the world. As the situation quieted down, it became clear how fearful the bomb was, fearful beyond ordinary human imagination. The first casualty report gave the dead as 30,000 and the injured as 86,000. Later it became known that the casualties were actually much larger. The epicenter was located south, or on the other side, as seen from here, of the Torii Gateway to the Gokoku Shrine. Of the 75,000 buildings and dwellings destroyed, 80% were lost by fires, which started between a few minutes to an hour after the atomic explosion. Except for their walls, concrete buildings also were completely burned out. Steel frames and structures which would not burn were bent, twisted, or otherwise fell in mangled heaps. As we drew close to the epicenter, we found that because the blast came from overhead, such perpendicular objects as the Torii Gateway, which is not a strong structure in itself, remained erect on the ground. This is the Commercial and Industrial Exhibits Building built of brick, 300 meters from the epicenter. tragedy, visited Nagasaki, a historic port city in the northwest of the island of Kyushu. The port of Nagasaki is a deep inlet connected with the East China Sea. Surrounded by house-covered hills, Nagasaki is, or rather used to be, one of the most picturesque port cities of Japan. Its population at the time of the disaster was 270,000. An old seaport, Nagasaki was also an active industrial city, with shipbuilding yards, steel mills, ordnance factories, and electrical manufacturing plants. With Sasebo Naval Base and the Omura airfield nearby, Nagasaki constituted an important military zone. Nagasaki, if you will recall your history, was the gateway to Japan in medieval times. Through it flowed into Japan the world's civilizations, before Japan secluded herself from the outside world for nearly 3 centuries. Evidences of these old contacts with the outside world were the many temples, whose architecture was fashioned after that of old China, and the Roman Catholic churches. It is the Holy Land of Japanese, who embraced the Roman Catholic faith, 22,000 of whom lived in Nagasaki. Came the deluge 3 days after the tragedy visited Hiroshima. The date, the 9th of August, 1945. The day was calm, bright, and windless. A hot summer sun shone upon the city. Since early morning, an air raid alarm was on in the Nagasaki-Sasebo area. Then it was lifted. But for 2 hours and a half, the alert warning continued to prevail. Then exactly at 11 o'clock, 2 superfortresses appeared over the city from the northeasterly direction, flying at a high altitude. The first plane dropped 3 objects attached to parachutes. At 11:02 o'clock, the second plane dropped an object, its descent taking about 40 seconds. Then came a blinding flash, followed by an explosion and a blaze. The destruction was the greatest ever wrought by man. The bomb missed the center of the city and detonated above a canyon to the north. Let us now view the general scene of devastation from the top of one of the hills to the east of the city. On the other side of the hills, at the left of the harbor, lies the city. These hills on both sides of the city were the breaks which intercepted the atomic blast and prevented the destruction from extending to the harbor section and the heart of the city. At the right of this narrow pass lies the area of total devastation. All buildings, save those of stout reinforced concrete, were demolished. The whole of this neighborhood once teemed with wooden houses and small factories. Now it's flattened out and denuded of everything. Only pebbles and broken tiles remain. The epicenter was slightly to the north of the center of this district. We first view in the neighborhood of the epicenter, and then the harbor and the urban center. The epicenter is between 30 to 40 meters across the road to the right of the telephone pole in the center of the picture. This pole was there before the bombing and was damaged very little, except the second crosspiece, which was bent down. This indicates that sudden pressure came practically from overhead. The camera will now be turned 360 degrees to view the immediate neighborhood of the epicenter. The epicenter is midway between where we are standing and the elevation in the background. Trees immediately below the point of detonation were not blown down. Though burnt, they remain standing erect. This is a view toward the west. We are now looking southward. And this is a view toward the east. This place on an elevation used to be a residential section. We called it the Hill of Death. It was densely crowded with small wooden houses which were completely destroyed. Only broken tiles and battered pieces of concrete walls remain.